Hey, I want to start off by kind of talking you through what my agenda is going to be today. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is your Army. The second thing I want to talk about is a little bit of acquisition reform stuff and the CFTs, and that will roll nicely into the Futures Command piece. Okay, so 3 agenda items. Now, just so you know, unfortunately, I am in the over 50 club. And for those of you that are in the over 50 club, and trust me, look around the room, you're out there, okay, you know who you are. We have this thing called senior moments, okay? So what that means to you that are not in the over 50 club is that there are times when we will forget things. Now, as you can see, I don't have any notes. I had notes, but my XO left them back at the office. He was subsequently fired for the first time today. There'll be more firings as we go on. He's right over here in case you didn't know. Raise your hand. There you go. So where was I? Okay, the Army. All right, so everybody knows how busy your Army is. Okay, we have over 180,000 soldiers supporting the COCOM combatant commands, the geographical combatant commands today in over 140 countries. We're an Army that's been at war for almost 17 years in a coin fight, and that is not ending. We're an Army that represents almost 48% of the overall demand signal of those GCCs, geographical combatant commands. 46%. So your Army is busy. We're an Army that's had to deal with huge cuts to the budget based on sequestration, just like the other services. So as you take a look at the 3 dials, as we call them, your force structure, how big do you want your Army to be? We were at 590, on our way down to 450, on our way, rumor, down to 480. I'm sorry, 380, okay? That's where we were. That is a must-pay bill. So how big do you want your Army to be? You have to fund that. What is the Chiefs and the Army's and the Secretary of the Army's #1 priority? Readiness, okay? How ready are we to deploy? How ready are we to go fight and win this nation's wars? Readiness is the #1 priority, so we had to fund that. So what was the last dial left? That's the modernization dial, right? So our modernization dial had to pay the price for the force structure, and it had to pay the price for the readiness. And so we have been on a modernization vacation for the last 8 years. And what does that mean? It means incremental upgrades to current capabilities, Bradley, Stryker, Abrams, Apache, Blackhawk, Chinook. Incremental upgrades only. But we're at the point now where we can no longer afford to do that. And fortunately, we've been given an opportunity by the Hill. In 18 and 19, our top line is higher than it's been in a long time. You take a look at 17, okay? $26.8 billion in the line for investment dollars, okay? Modernization. In 18, that number skyrocketed to 28.9. And in 19, that number is 32 billion. 20 and out, we certainly don't know. Sequestration can roll back in, but for the next 2 years, 18 and 19, we have to take advantage of this opportunity that we've been handed. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Okay? The Chief, the Secretary have made it clear that modernization has to move forward, and it has to move forward rapidly, and they have challenged us to get after it. And that's exactly what we're doing. So how are we doing that? Okay? #1, we had to make sure that we named our top 6 priorities. Okay? Because we're going from this coin fight, okay, into what we know is going to be a multi-domain. And when I say multi-domain, I mean land, maritime, air, space, and cyberspace. We know that we're going to go into conflict potentially, and the NDS tells us our pacing threats spelled out. So we're going to find ourselves potentially, in a near-peer fight that we have to prepare for. Our job in the Army is to prepare for war when not at war. And we are certainly at war today, but we are preparing in case we're called upon tomorrow. And that fight is going to be a difficult one. And it's going to take us to concentrate our modernization on getting after those particular parts and pieces that we're missing today, that we take risk on. Our peers have been investing in electronic warfare. Our peers have been investing in hypersonics. We have to get after that piece too. Next, if you take a look at where we're going with the CFTs and the rest of it, the ability to take advantage of where technology is leading us, okay? We all know that the lockstep, bureaucratic, industrial-based process that we've been under in terms of acquisition for all these many years has got to go. Congress understands that. We understand that. OSD understands that. So we started getting after it within the Army. The formulation of our CFTs around our 6+2 top priorities: long-range precision fires, next-generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift, network, air and missile defense, soldier lethality, and then as you add the other two, assured PNT, as well as synthetic training environment. Okay, those 6 top priorities, we put together CFTs in order to get after it. So what is that? What does that really mean? In the past, in our lethargic bureaucratic process, the way we wrote requirements were in a vacuum. Okay, we wrote them in a vacuum. They were not informed requirements. Technology was not informing them. Testing was not informing them. Sustainment, logistics was not informing them. They were written in vacuums. So we would take that requirement and we'd take the next 2 years and we'd throw it over the fence to the acquisition community and we'd say, go fetch, go make this happen. And the acquisition community would grab it and we'd take a look at the requirement and we would go after it. Whether or not it was unobtainium or not, we went after it. Okay? We didn't have soldier touch points along the way to make sure that we were doing the right things. The first time soldiers touched a program, a piece of kit, was LUT. Okay, limited user test, right before milestone C. That's how we did business. We know that we can't do that anymore. Technology is advancing too fast, and we know that we can't do business as usual. So we put together CFTs, informed by our scientists and engineers, informed by industry, informed by our testers, informed by our users, informed by our logisticians, informed by our budgeteers, so that we could get after requirements that won't take 2 years to process. Instead, 1 month to 6 months. So we're spinning those quickly so we can get them into budget and get them funded and get it moving on. So the CFTs, of which our program executive offices are in direct support of, have made a huge difference in putting out requirements that are informed, and we're not asking for unobtainium. So there's a complete change to the way we've been doing business, as well as putting soldiers on kit early, experimentation, prototyping. These kind of things in terms of reform is what we're getting after today. Firm fixed price developmental contracts. Industry, that's what we're looking at going forward. A lot of that effort, okay? We're going to do business the way industry does business. Congress is helping us. They're helping us by creating laws that allow us to get after the flexibility and agility that we lost for all these many years. Items such as other transactional authorities, our ability to reach out to industry. Right now, there are 23 million companies in the United States of America. 23 million. Guess how many do business with the Department of Defense? 5,000. We're missing out on huge opportunities. Other transactional authorities allow us to get after these non-traditional industry partners. Bring those capabilities in, okay, that we've been missing all these many years. Not having to worry about doing things the lockstep, FAR-based method, but doing things the way industry does things in terms of their ability to work with one another. These partnerships between small non-traditionals and larger companies are going to be the keys to success as we go forward. No doubt about it. The other tool that Congress has given us is 804 authority. Okay? The ability to rapidly prototype and then the ability to rapidly field a capability. And now with the 19 language, if we can not only develop it, but get into LRIP within 5 years, we can use 804 authorities, which allow us to not have to have a JSIDS-based document, requirement document, and we do not have to follow 5,000, DoD 5,000. These are huge opportunities for us to get after the environment that we find ourselves today, where technology is advancing at rates that are unprecedented, and the threat is able to get within our decisions process, get within our do loop, and has caught up with us in many areas and surpassed us in some. So these are the key things that we're going after in terms of our Army. So how does this roll into Futures Command and the rest of it? What's the rest of the story? So right now, when the Chief of Staff and the Secretary of the Army have a problem with institutional training or recruitment, they're able to look at TRADOC and say, General Townsend, we need you to fix this. When they have a problem associated with sustainment, okay, they're able to go to General Perna, the AMC commander, and say, Gus, we need you to fix this. When they have a problem with readiness, the ability for our forces to deploy tonight, and they're having issues there, they go directly to General Abrams and say, General Abrams, Abe, go fix this. When it came to modernization as an enterprise, they had nobody that they could go and say, we need this fixed. They had a lot of partners and players involved in the enterprise called modernization. So the modernization piece, the Army Futures Command, was put together in order to address that. So what does it really mean? There's really three pillars, if you will, with respect to the Futures Command. The first is futures and concepts. So what is that? Why is that important? Well, first of all, what is the battlefield going to look like in 2036? What is going to be the TTP, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that we are going to need to have to fight and win in that war, in that battle? Where is it going to be conducted? Megacities? What will be our unit of action? Right now, we know that we are organized around brigade combat teams. Is that what we're going to need to be organized in the future? Brigade combat teams? Or is it going to be something else? You have to take that into account. What technologies are going to be available in 2036? What is quantum computing going to do? What is high energy lasers? Directed energy weapons? Hypersonics? AI? Artificial intelligence? What does all that mean, and what is going to be capable of being, I would say, produced and available in 2036? The visionaries of the Futures and Concepts group have to get after that particular piece. I often tell people, hey, if you want to know the future, the visionaries, don't look towards people that wear this. Where do you go look? Hollywood. Think about it. How many things do we have in our hands today, or just right around the corner, that you saw in movies when you were growing up? Okay? So we have to get after those visionaries to help us get after that fight and what it's going to look like in 2036. So that's futures and concepts. The next one is combat development. Okay? So combat development is the ability to take those aspects of futures and concepts and turn those into requirements. We'll have the ARDEX involved in that. ARCIC obviously will be in the futures and concepts as well as combat development, but we have to get after writing those requirements and making those things happen. So our ARDEX, our ability to prototype and so forth, going to be very instrumental in the combat development piece to fight and win in 2036. And then finally, combat systems. Taking what we learned from the futures and concepts folks, turning that into experimentation, turning that into prototyping, turning that into capabilities that we can test and see what happens, put soldiers on it early, get feedback, and find out other ways of using the same material to do certain things. So that's what Futures Command is all about. It's about bringing together all the parts and pieces of the enterprise called modernization under one roof in order to get after the thing that we've been missing all these many years. Agility, speed, and the ability to make sure that we can fight and win not only today, but well into the future. So that's what it's all about in a nutshell. With that, I want to thank all of you once again. There is a saying that is on a wall of a classified unit in the support squadron, and I'll paraphrase it. It goes something like this. Never judge your self-worth to the overall accomplishment of the mission based solely on your proximity to the final objective. Let me repeat that. Never judge your self-worth to the overall accomplishment of the mission based solely on your proximity to the final objective. None of us in this room today are in Afghanistan, albeit many of you have been. None of us in this room today are in Iraq, Syria, albeit many of us have been. but each and every one of you in this room, each and every single one of you, have been able to provide the capabilities, the lethality, the situational awareness, the ability to fight and win in contested environments that we need going forward. And so thank you for all that you have done, and thank you for what you're going to continue to do in support of our Army. Army strong. Okay, so I have volunteered to be the person that calls upon people to ask questions. So I see the first one over here on the right-hand side.
Oh, here we go.
Hi, Jen Judson with Defense News. I wanted to ask about multi-year contracts and how you're thinking about those going forward as you're thinking about rolling in new futures capabilities that are produced. Multi-year contracts obviously tie you to a certain platform for a period of time. And as you're looking at rapidly rolling in new capability, how are you looking at maybe getting away from those or shortening them? What's the strategy?
Sure. Great question. I will tell you that multi-year contracts are an extremely beneficial tool to the Army. It allows us to save billions of dollars in terms of the capabilities that we need. Right now, our multi-years are fixated on our rotary wing platforms. In terms of Black Hawk, Apache, we awarded 17 through 21 on both those platforms, 17 through 21. We had a multi-year on the Chinook, but now that we're moving to a Block 2, that ended in 17. So we will not be moving forward with another multi-year until Block 2 is ready to go. There has been a call to potentially move some of that multi-year concept into the ground combat vehicle fleet. Again, the goodness of the multi-year, we're able to save hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars across the spectrum because of the ability that industry knows that they are going to have a guaranteed floor buy for many years, okay, 4 to 5 years. That's what it's all about. Industry is able to plan for that. They're able to hire for that. They're able to buy the long lead items for that. They're able to get after it from that perspective and therefore pass the savings to the government. Now, multi-years take a couple years, believe it or not, to put into place because what you have to have is, number one, the intent of the service to do it, and you have to have Congress's okay. Remember, everybody, our stakeholder, okay, is the 535 members of the Hill who represent the United States of America, the people of the United States of America. If they don't agree that they're going to put a minimum cost or minimum amount of budget every single year into the budget, then we can't do the multi-year. It is based on Congress saying, yes, we will sign up to ensure that for the next 4 years, you will have X amount of dollars in that budget line for that particular piece of kit. So it is a commitment by them. It is a commitment by the service. There's a lot of goodness, and there's some drawbacks because of the fact that, again, Congress may or may not be willing to make that commitment. But it's something that we continue to work because the benefits to the taxpayer are there, and so we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can to be great stewards of the taxpayer dollars. So great question. Hopefully that answers it for you.
Here, sir.
Yep.
Sir, Scott Sharp, OSD PNR. Sir, you've talked about how we've restructured within the Army to go after rapid acquisition, and even the Congress has given the Army additional authorities. How are we adjusting the risk tolerance for the principal members, the Secretary, to actually leverage those, and how is that being communicated to the workforce that actually has to go out and accept the risk on behalf of the Secretary and yourself?
So let me just kind of bring everybody up to speed with respect to the way that the senior leadership of the Army looks at risk. We have this thing called programmatic risk, and that's what the program managers and the PEOs are always concerned about. The ability for that technology to be available, the ability for us to not have issues associated with producibility of a piece of kit. Those kind of things roll into what we then create a schedule, okay, in order to get after it. What is the technology readiness level of the particular piece of item, not only from a system level, but a component level, and also from an integration level. So the programmatic risk is what we try to manage within the acquisition community, our program managers, our PEOs. And that's important. And then there's this other thing, and that's called the operational risk, okay? And that's where the chief and that's where the secretary have their minds on, okay? And rightfully so. Why? Because right now, if we're going after a material solution to something, that means we've got a capability gap. And if we got a capability gap, that we are exposing soldiers potentially to harm that we could try to avoid, or we should avoid immediately. So you have to weigh the operational gap against a programmatic gap, okay? And that's where we have to balance it. And what that means is that we're going to have to take more risk on the programmatic side, okay? Not be conservative, be aggressive, because if we don't, the operational risk is going to cost us in the end. So what they've challenged us is to, number one, not be as conservative, let them know where we have our risks, and manage that the best that we possibly can. And we owe it to them to let them know where those risks are and the time associated with getting the capability today or getting the capability in 5 years. What is the risk between the two in terms of our willingness and ability to make it happen, and what happens if we fail, okay? So those are the things that we're pushing for. Now, what does that drive? It drives us to more of a non-developmental item approach. We don't want to go after unobtainium, okay? That's what's got us in trouble before. If we're going to go after a full developmental item, okay, we are going to do it in a very, I would say, disciplined way of experimentation and prototyping to ensure that we're not just buying into a design that's on paper, but to a design that we can physically touch and see in use. Joint multi-role is a great example of that, okay? This is not a paper airplane. This is not a drawing. These are aircraft that are flying, okay? We went after that piece. And if we're going to fail, we're going to fail early. That's the whole piece of this, okay? So hopefully that answers your question.
Good morning, Ashley Tressel with Inside the Army. I have a two-part question, if that's all right with you, General.
Remember now, I'm over 50. I can't remember both, but
Right.
We'll try.
Okay. For the Section 804 authority, we know that the Army plans to use it for a minefield technology, but do you know of any other technologies that the Army plans to use it for in the future? And then on other transaction agreements, Dr. Jetty has said that he is mindful of boundaries with that authority. How would you describe the way that the Army has figured out rules and where it will use it and where it may not use it?
Great questions. I hope I can remember both of them. So let me get after your second one first. Number one, other transactional authorities belonged originally to NASA and then over to DARPA, allowed the ability for them to experiment and prototype. And then it was provided to the Department of Defense at large, writ large, only to prototype, okay? And then over the subsequent years of the NDAAs, it was to not only prototype, but also you can go as far as low-rate initial production using an OTA. And now we have the ability that if you compete the OTA up front, we have the ability to go all the way through experimentation, low-rate initial production, and into full-rate production using that particular tool, okay? That legal binding agreement between ourselves and industry, which is huge because it allows us to move forward faster. Now, everybody knows that there are always going to be people that take advantage, one way or another, of rules, which is why the amount of statute that covers and the amount of regulations and the amount of policies that cover the acquisition business are ginormous, okay? We have to protect this tool, okay? This is a gift on behalf of the Congress of the United States of America to the Department of Defense saying we trust you to get after this thing, to be more rapid, to be more agile. Don't screw this up. And guess what? We've done that. We've screwed it up. Okay, there are a couple examples out there. And so our caution to our Army is that when we're using this particular tool, that we will protect it at all costs because it is just one stroke of the pen away from being taken away from us. So we are absolutely adamant about ensuring we don't do stupid human tricks when it comes to OTAs. Okay? And we ask industry, their support, to make sure that both sides of this story are playing with open transparency and fairness. and that's all we can ask of you. As far as 804 authorities, our Rapid Capabilities Office have done numerous 804s right now. I will tell you also that as this authority moves its way towards the ability for us to go into not only full rate production and being able to field the Army, before 804, in the current language, before 19, the current language in the bill allows us to only prototype and go to full rate production and field the Army. In other words, if you can field the entire Army within 5 years, you can use 804 authority. Now, how many things does the Army field in 5 years to the entire Army? Okay, very few things. Okay, so that was a limiter. Okay, with respect to what we were able to do originally, which is why we went back to the Hill and said, hey, look, give us the authority to meet LRIP within 5 years, because the way we peanut butter spread our dollars in terms of procurement over many, many years, we're never going to be able to use this authority that you're giving us. And they have heard that concern and are making those particular marks in the 19 NDAA, and we support that and appreciate it. Hopefully that answers your question, Asher.
Yes, sir. If there is one, oh, there we go. Courtney. Waited till the last minute.
Thanks. General Ostrowski. Courtney McBride, temporarily unaffiliated.
Not for long, though, I hear.
No, yeah. So Futures Command is now at IOC, for what it's worth. There was some question about the potential tension between ASALT, which still has the authority over PEOs and PMs, and Futures Command as you're trying to consolidate authority for modernization. Has some of that been worked out? Is there sort of a clear plan for that? I know we haven't really seen it, but is there something? And I know there was talk of matrixing perhaps your position over to Futures Command.
Great question, Courtney. I appreciate it. I had softballs thrown at me earlier. She just threw the hardball at me. Hey, I will tell you this. No, there is no doubt in our mind whatsoever that the Army is going to do exactly what Congress expects us to do. By law, Title 10, okay, the acquisition authority flows through the Defense Acquisition Executive, through the Secretary of the Army, to the Service Acquisition Executive, which in this case is the Army Acquisition Executive, which is Dr. Jetty, down to the Program Executive Offices, down to the Program Managers. Okay, that's Title 10, and that's exactly what's in statute, and that's exactly what the Army is going to do. Now, are we going to be in direct support of the Army Futures Command in terms of PMs and PEOs? Absolutely. We are in direct support right now of all the CFTs. We are in direct support of all the Centers of Excellence in terms of the acquisition community. We are in direct support of all of this. And so that will not change in terms of our directly supporting the Army Futures Command. Okay, so be no doubt about it, we are going to continue to do business the way we have with respect to the law, and we are going to continue to provide that excellent acquisition support that the Army Futures Command, the Centers of Excellence, and everyone else expects us to do, and we're going to do it by the law, and we're going to do it well. Now, over time, the working arrangements, okay, are going to work themselves out. For instance, right now, you take a look at it. Program managers are in charge of life cycle sustainment for our programs, right? Where does the sustainment fall within our Army? Army Materiel Command, okay? Does it work? It works. Okay, so there are examples of where while the whole enterprise is not completely under one roof, the enterprise itself is actually able to operate very, very well within the guidance of the law. So great question. Hopefully I answered it for you.
Let's have a hand for General Ostrowski, please.
Thanks, everyone.